All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking about real music in real time for a few real people out here, just like you and just like me. All right, so replacement singers. Why, at the end of the day, replacement singers always kind of leave us feeling like we're not getting what we should be getting when it comes to these older bands? And I'll just go through a few of them, and people have opinions on this. And by the way, I'm not hating on anyone if I'm comparing the original singer to the replacement singer. Is that fair? Well, the band decided to replace the singer with someone else who they felt could carry on and keep the band going. uh, Probably one of the most blaring examples is the band Journey getting rid of Steve Perry, or Steve Perry walking away, and then, or combination of both. And then they had Steve Augeri. Um, Steve Augeri is a very nice man, but again, replacing Steve Perry is kind of impossible. And that might be one of the reasons Steve said at the time, don't break the stone. Don't crack the stone, because if you do, it just won't be the same. And look at all the grief that RNL takes to this day. And he basically says, well, I'll just step aside. You guys don't want me here anymore. I'll just leave. Which, it's a little bit passive aggressive, but I get where he's coming from. Foreigner. I think Kelly Hansen was a really good replacement for Lou Gramm. Um, but as time goes on, people hear those old records and they go, there's just nothing like Lou Gramm in his prime. Um, and they're correct. Kansas would be another one. I mentioned Steve Walsh, who left the band a number of years ago. He was still singing, I believe, in the correct key, the original key, but his voice had gotten very worn. It had a very different tone to it, but he was still singing at full strength. They brought in a new vocalist, and they continued on. But Steve Walsh in his prime, or even not in his early 70s or mid 70s prime, still a great singer, probably well into the 2000s. Um, but he did stuff that few vocalists can do, and a lot of people forget. Go listen to Carry On Wayward Son. It's insane. And all of those old Kansas records, you needed someone who could deliver. And that guy just hit every note and was basically like an athlete out there. He used to do handstands on the keyboards. Great frontman, great showman, even though they had a lot of different people in Kansas doing a lot of different things. Um, Again, the current band is okay. And we're talking, almost rebuilt from the ground up band at this point. Other than, I think, Rich Williams. I know they had some old timers show up at a gig not too long ago, and people were really thrilled about that. But if you go through any of these bands that have replaced singers over the years, and you think to yourself, well, I guess I don't really care what the band sounds like that much, so long as I get this crossed off my bucket list. You have Journey and Foreigner out there still. You've got other bands like Styx, who have replaced Dennis DeYoung with Lawrence Gowan. And a lot of people don't seem to care or mind, but those are two very different singers. Those are very different sounds. And there were other people out there, as I've made the case a few times, that probably sound more like Dennis. If you were going to replace Dennis, at least, aim a little bit higher. But from what I understand, and this goes back to the Kansas thing, Rich Williams said this in an interview. Well, we all get along with each other. We like one another. There's no drama in the band. Basically alluding to the fact that they'll hire somebody if they like hanging around with them. Look what's happened to the band Chicago over the years with all the different singers. Nobody's going to touch Peter. Nobody touches Peter Cetera. Jason Scheff did a phenomenal job, and he kind of redefined Chicago during the 80s into the 90s. A good guy, too, and worked very hard at his craft. but a very different singer than Peter. David Foster tried to get him to sing like Peter on Chicago 18, and it kind of worked. But Peter Cetera, what, broke his jaw or something in a bar fight? And he kind of sang with clenched teeth and so forth. That's the way he kind of adapted to what happened to his face, and it actually gave him a very unique sound. In addition to the fact that he had already had a super high tenor. Go listen to like I'm a Man and stuff like that, which is just, Peter is singing in the stratosphere. It's pretty amazing. But nobody could touch Peter Cetera. You've had more singers come along. My buddy Jeff Coffey, who's a great guy, left Chicago. And then Neil Donnell is the current singer. I saw them the other day doing Hard to Say I'm Sorry with Neil Donnell singing. He did a good job with it. But man, that song in particular, that's the Peter Cetera, David Foster sort of renaissance of Chicago. And I don't know, you need Peter. And if you don't have Peter, to me, it just doesn't work. Some of those older songs, you might be able to get away with a different singer, but Hard to Say I'm Sorry is just such a big song. Anyway, and you could go through the list of Neil Donnell does an okay job, but I'm really starting to wonder, this replacement of singers over time, and you keep doing it, and the fans are so forgiving because you still have the brand name, and you might have one original guy in there or two. In the case of Chicago, you've got Robert Lamb, Lee Loughnane, and James Pankow. That's it. You got three guys. And James, I know, has taken some time off, and people are telling me Robert looks a little like he's ready to retire out there, but they all talked about how they're just going to keep going until they all fall over. That's how they're going to go out. They're going to do a whole like Picasso exit, which I think it's a little, nobody wants to see anyone collapsing on stage. No, nobody wants to see that. Although you could always say, I was at the performance where Chicago, the old timers just kind of collapsed, and that was the end of Chicago. But I'm pretty sure a lot of these bands will try to keep going without original members, like with zero. Like they'll rebuild and put out their own version of Chicago with the blessing of the older guys. And I don't know how I feel about that, but here's a point I'm going to make, is that I'd rather see that than old guys pretending that they sound the same. Now, again, I'm going to get some grief. They're going to say I'm a hater again. Kevin Cronin. Go listen to Kevin Cronin in 1980. It's a different, it doesn't even sound like the same person. Don Barnes from 38 Special. Same thing. And I love Don Barnes. He's a good guy. And, he looks great for his age. He's out there just kicking butt and taking names and still doing Hold On Loosely. It's fantastic, but go back and listen to those records. When you hear that stuff on the radio and then you hear a current live version of whatever, folks, it's bad. It's really bad. That's why when Foreigner did that little gig in Tampa where they showed up at a radio station and played 2 or 3 acoustic songs, and they brought Luis Maldonado, who is not the current lead singer of Foreigner. But I think he was in Train or something like that. And he sang the Foreigner stuff like Lou Gramm, a lot like Lou Gramm. And it was really impressive. And it was just 3 guys. And I would rather see that. And I know that's even less Foreigner in a sense, but if it's accurate and it's faithful to the sound that the band created in their prime, not like 5 years ago or anything like that, then to me, that's a better concert to go to. That's like, okay. It's like when I went to see Brit Floyd, right? Brit Floyd, an honest to goodness tribute band, and more accurate to Pink Floyd than David Gilmour or Roger Waters could pull off right now. David Gilmour at times is still, he's kind of in the ballpark. But these guys, the energy, whether the other issue is that they do both the Waters parts and the Gilmore parts vocally, so you're not going to get that anymore with either of those two guys because they don't like each other, and there's no way that they're going to bring Pink Floyd back. And I don't know if it would be a big deal if they did. Maybe, probably be a big deal, but just because, hey, it's a Pink Floyd reunion, and you missing one key guy who passed away. Is that Richard Wright? But Nick Mason, I'm pretty sure would do it in a heartbeat. And it would be kind of legitimate if those guys really just rehearsed and did their thing and worked hard at it. But the bottom line is many of these bands, to me, are not doing justice to their legacies. As they continue to kind of move away from whatever singer got them established, and then their replacement singer is starting to get long in the tooth or doesn't really come close to what he sounded like when he first started, which is happening in several bands now. You've got to think to yourself, all right, well, maybe it's time to just retire or recruit new people. Maybe the KISS philosophy is right. Maybe they should just recruit a new KISS to go out there and perform the songs, and give them the name, give them the trademark, and people will say, yeah, I remember I saw the first generation of KISS or the original KISS. You guys are seeing a fake version, but the fake version sounds better than the original version did when they retired. And I think you're going to find that that's probably the most satisfying way moving forward that classic rock, if it does survive, can survive, So in any event, just some random thoughts. I've been listening to some current old bands lately and comparing the current sound to the old sound, and it's sad more than anything else how much time has gone by, and mortality and aging and all of that stuff. And I don't know, was rock and roll supposed to get old? According to Grace Slick, no. Rock and roll is a young person's sport, and a lot of people think that's more appropriate than old geezers going out there pretending, that they're going to rock you like a hurricane. They're not. And that's a whole other topic. Some of this stuff has aged really poorly, and it's almost embarrassing. You got old guys up there singing these songs about 20-year-old hot chicks that they were trying to whatever with back in the day, and it just it's just not good. This is why I listen to a lot of Christian music these days, because I can't do with ridiculous. It's just ridiculous at this point in my life. You could say, hey, it's just an anthem, which it is. I had one guy tell me it's just a rock anthem. What's your problem with it? Because I know what the song's about. I know what it's about when I hear here I am, rock you like a hurricane. Is that appropriate? It hasn't aged well. Little girl, you got me down on my knees. I mean, and how old are you, sir? I mean, wouldn't you be on like a poster on a telephone pole somewhere if you were saying that, to somebody in your neighborhood? It's just, yeah, things didn't age well. And that's the only thing the grunge people probably had a point about. Although they went from ridiculous, misogynistic lyrics or whatever to, I'm doomed, everything sucks, the world is horrible, and you have to live here, and we're all going to just commiserate together. So I don't know. I kind of prefer the kind of happy-go-lucky stuff, which even though it hasn't aged well, at least it's not depressing. It just sounds kind of ridiculous now. All right. That's it. Done. Promise. Really.